more frustration among those who are not able to access opportunities. Because it is also clear that the distinction that we created in incomes also created distinction in lifestyle and, more importantly, in access to opportunities. And the biases that we had in society actually accentuated that even more. The biases for language, for color, for gender, for regions, we had many built-in biases into our system. So the question that we need to ask ourselves is, how can we as individuals, as families, as societies, and more importantly, as organizations and companies, drive some of this behavior to be better citizens for the world, to be those who will do good for ourselves as also for those around us, to create a happier and a prosperous, more prosperous society and people at large, to be more friendly to the ecology and to the environment, to tread lightly on this planet. How do we make sure that the technology that is being made available to us, and at an increasing pace, it is increasing its ability, capacity, memory, and speed? How do we use that for us to become better at what we do rather than get driven purely by technology for the reasons and sake of technology? How does technology give us better education access? How does it provide better assessment for healthcare situation? How does it provide care to those who do not today have care? How do we reach out, therefore, to those who are less fortunate and provide opportunities to them using bandwidth, technology, and access that is available now as a vehicle to allow services and goods to get transacted and transferred and to reach people in all corners of the world? It is a very unique situation that a pandemic has made us sit up and think and take note of what are some of the things that are important to us. Our families. Pablo Picasso had once said, nothing great gets created without solitude. We are now, many of us are locked in at home for months on end, and that has made many people think as to what is really important, what is critical in our lives, what truly matters. And I think this is another thing which is important for us to remember as we look at things like governance, use of technology, regulations, policy making, as to what really matters. Who is all this for? Why do we do this? And that will automatically give us a direction as to what, therefore, we should be doing. How we should be thinking along this path, which allows prosperity to be all pervasive, which allows the values that we are born with. If you see young children smile a lot, they are naturally curious. They will ask questions. They will break things. As we get older, we try and train ourselves not to smile. We tell people, don't do this. Don't ask these questions. Is that the right kind of environment that we want to build? Is that the kind of management and governance that should be encouraged? So I'm expanding, Murthy, this is for you. I'm expanding the scope of the speech from just being a business governance to governance at a larger scale and level, because eventually all of us need to be governed and all of us need to govern ourselves. And I think that also leads us to ask the questions as to what is it that we do? Who do we do it for? Why do we do it? What do we hope to achieve by doing what we do? I'm sorry to raise this to a more philosophical level, but I think it is important. And every now and then, life presents us with a situation which actually makes us take a pause, give a little thought, ponder about where we are, and then decide where we want to go. So thank you very much, Sanjay, for giving me an opportunity to be involved in this absolutely unique convention where we have such amazing leaders, Mr. Narayana Murthy, who will talk to us about subjects that really matter to each one of us. Mr. Narayana Murthy, you are a leader in every aspect of the world. I have always enjoyed my conversation with you and always come back learning something, even we had a simple social conversation. You not only talk about doing the right thing, you walk the talk. And you've shown us on multiple occasions why the right thing is the right thing. why there is a distinction between what is right and what is not. And therefore, when we listen to you about what boards and what board members and what independent boards, independent members on boards need to do, we sit up and take note of what you say. So thank you very much for agreeing to give the keynote address in this session. May I now invite you to give us your address. Thank you. You need to unmute yourself, please. Mr. Murthy, you need to unmute your mic.
Just a minute.
At the bottom. Yeah, you got it. That's it. It's okay.
Oh,
it's
okay now? Yeah.
Go ahead, please.
Yeah. Thanks. Sunil, thanks a lot for your kind words. You and I have been friends for a long time now. I'm also among friends, whether it's Sanjay, Singhania, Rekha, and others. Thank you very much for this kind invitation to address you on this important topical issue. While Sunil spoke about a very wide canvas, I will restrict myself to a small part of that canvas, which is corporate governance, particularly in listed companies. Even though what I say is based on my experience with and the knowledge of listed companies, I believe that these observations hold good even for privately held companies. The economic reforms of 1991 influenced the listed companies in India in three major ways. First, India welcomed a large number of global institutional investors. These investors expected Indian listed companies to raise the level of their financial disclosure to match the level of such disclosure in developed countries like the US and the UK. Second, by abolishing the office of the controller of capital issues, the central government made listing on the Indian stock exchanges an attractive proposition for entrepreneurs. Third, the traditional businesses realized the power of the price to earnings ratio. They embraced the wisdom that a rupee added to the bottom line of their listed companies would add anywhere between 10 rupees and 20 rupees, sometimes maybe 30 rupees, based on the price to earning ratio of their companies, and that resulting in adding to their own personal wealth. Good governance is about deciding to do the right thing, while good management is all about doing that right thing well. Good corporate governance is about creating sustained competitive differentiation in the marketplace to maximize the shareholder value legally, ethically, and on a sustainable basis, while ensuring fairness, transparency, and accountability to every stakeholder of a company. That is, customers, employees, investors, vendor partners, the government of the land, and the society or the community. Governance is a reflection of the culture and the values of a company's board and management. Good governance in a company enhances the confidence, trust, and enthusiasm of its stakeholders. Thanks to SEBI, corporate governance levels in India have improved considerably in the last 3 decades. However, during the last 5 years, there have been a few instances of serious governance deficits in some listed companies. This has created doubts among investors, notably international investors, about the quality of corporate governance of Indian companies. The primary functions of a corporate board include ensuring a robust quality growth of both the top line and the bottom line of the company, protecting and enhancing the reputation of the company in every action that the company takes, reviewing, critiquing, and improving the strategy presented by the management, setting clear key performance indices for the CXOs, that is the CEO, the COO, the CFO, etc., and other officers of the company, recommending a fair and performance based compensation to the CXOs and other officers of the company after consulting key knowledgeable shareholders, as it happens in the case of some well governed companies in the West, and after obtaining the approval of the shareholders, creating a succession plan for the CXOs and key officers of the company, identifying risks and taking timely action to mitigate or eliminate them, putting in place systems of information control, checks and balances, and ensuring that they are working, ensuring full compliance of regulations required by every statutory authority of the land, getting capital and revenue budgets prepared and approved after informed discussions, applying mind, reviewing and approving acquisitions, mergers, dividends, rights issues, bonus shares, and buyback of shares proposed by the management, addressing shareholder grievances in a fair and transparent manner, and installing a robust whistleblower policy and ensuring its proper functioning to address the complaints of whistleblowers. Now, there are three key players in a corporate governance system. The first, of course, are the shareholders, who are the owners of the company in proportion to the number of voting shares they hold in the company. Second, the board of directors, which is responsible for governance of the company, which oversees the management, which is appointed by the shareholders and is therefore accountable to the shareholders. The third player is the management, that is the CXOs and the other executive officers who form the management of the company, run the business, and report the performance of the company to the shareholders periodically through the board of directors. The primary corporate governance problem is to minimize what is called agency cost. Agency cost is the cost incurred by the management for achieving the objectives of the company as decided by the shareholders. Agency costs tend to be inflated due to the divergence of interest between the management on one side and the shareholders on the other side. In the so-called professional managed companies, such costs manifest as the propensity of management leaders to wring out of a weak board high and unjustifiable for themselves, and to violate the company rules to use company's resources for their personal benefits and comforts. In the case of a so called promoter managed company, this problem generally manifests as the asymmetry of benefits created by these owner managers in their favor and against other shareholders. A typical example would be the use of the funds of a listed company owned partially by an owner manager to fund the growth of a private company held wholly or to a larger extent by the owner manager, his or her family, and friends. This is generally called a related party transaction. That is, conducting a company's financial transactions with either a senior management staff or his or her relatives or friends. Generally, such transactions result in inflated costs or financial damages to the listed company and favor the other party in the transaction. Many a time, related party transactions involve paying unusually large severance payments beyond the contracted amount to an officer of the company to buy his or her silence. The duty of a board is to apply their mind and prevent such transactions. I will speak today on a few important issues like making good corporate governance the norm in India, creating a competent and value based board, senior management compensation, whistleblower handling, and the importance of transparency with shareholders. I will not waste your precious time on mundane matters since that information is available in various reports and textbooks. How can good corporate governance become the norm in a company in India? To me, it is simple. We have to create a climate of opinion that respect is more important than wealth and power. Before taking any decision, if the board and the management were to debate whether such a decision would indeed enhance the respect for the company in the eyes of its stakeholders, and whether such a decision would enhance the respect for the decision maker in the eyes of his or her peers, bosses, and subordinates, then I believe that such a decision is likely to be a good and respectable decision. Such decisions enhance the respect for the company. How do we create good boards? The first step, in my opinion, is appointing a person with competence, character, and commitment to be the chairman of the board. Selection of such a chairman is crucial to the success of a board. A board that performs well for a long period under a competent and respected chairman can go astray when led by a morally weak and incompetent chairman. The next step is to bring in a set of accomplished, confident, value based, and independent minded people with self respect and self esteem as board members. In addition, it is a good idea for the board members to be selected based on their expertise in corporate functions like strategy, acquisitions, finance, sales, manufacturing, technology, R&D, and human resources. These people may be taken through a robust training and certification program on board governance and committee responsibilities. The business specific part of the program is generally held by the officers of the corporation. The board governance part of the training may be held by external specialists. Every year, there should be a peer evaluation of each member of the board. This exercise is generally handled by the chairman of the nominations committee. The parameters used for such an evaluation are in the realm of board governance of that committee. The chairman of the board then sits with each board member, discusses his or her evaluation, and suggests remedies and improvements. The chairman's performance review is handled by the lead independent director. Managerial remuneration should be based on three important principles. First, a fair multiple of the compensation of the lowest level employee in the company. Second, full transparency on details of such compensation to shareholders. And third, accountability by linking the variable part of the compensation with the long-term company performance. In some well-run global corporations, the compensation issue is discussed with a few top shareholders before deciding. Then it is placed before the shareholders for their approval at the AGM or at an EGM. According to Wikipedia, a whistleblower is a person who exposes information about a secretive, illegal, and unethical activity that is supposed to have taken place in a private or a public organization. The whistleblower may be an internal employee or an outsider. While whistleblowers have been given considerable protection by the law, they may still face protracted legal action, criminal charges, and even social stigma in our society. It is very important that whistleblowers are totally honest in their complaint. Whistleblowing should Whistleblowing should not be an act of revenge by a disgruntled employee. The whistleblower must substantiate his or her complaint with data and facts. Else, they will be guilty of maligning innocent people and harming the reputation of the organization. No whistleblower has the right to harm an organization on which a large number of families depend for their livelihood. Having put in these caveats, I believe that a corporation must provide total protection to whistleblowers against vendetta by the bosses. How should boards address such a complaint? An important duty of a board is protecting and enhancing the reputation of the company and discharging its fiduciary responsibilities, as I alluded to earlier. Therefore, addressing a whistleblower complaint in a transparent and trust enhancing manner is a must. If the complaint is against a middle or a low level employee, an internal committee consisting of senior employees not connected with the accused and committed to total fairness and transparency should be sufficient. If the complaint is against any member of the board, including the chairman, the CEO, an executive director, or an officer of the company, the tendency of most Indian boards is to investigate such complaints themselves, assisted by an outside law firm, pay them, obviously, for their work, and obfuscate the issue. This is not a good idea because you cannot be the judge, the jury, and the defendant. Is there a solution? The boards of some globally reputed companies totally recuse themselves from the investigation of the complaint in such situations. The top 10 shareholders, some of whom may be institutional investors, invite a committee of highly respected individuals in the society to investigate the whistleblower's complaint. The company secretary provides all the resources needed by this committee to conduct a thorough investigation. SEBI may be concerned about the possibility of the friends and sympathizers of a company's board members and officers being appointed to such an investigating committee. SEBI, therefore, may take over the responsibility of appointing such a committee. After all, you do not get too many whistleblower complaints in a year. Hopefully not. If the investigation concludes that the board and the officers of the company did not perform their fiduciary duties and contributed to a governance deficit, either by omission or by commission, then the investigating committee recommends to the shareholders that a penalty must be paid by the entire board and the concerned officers. Unfortunately, the white collar guilty people in India do not pay any penalty for their crimes and are just asked to resign. This is not a good idea. SEBI must blacklist these board members and officers. The shareholders must vote them out. In addition, the shareholders must claw back 100% of the compensation or the fee received by the board and the officers during the tenure of the incident. That is, the date when the incident occurred to the time the investigation is complete. That is the tenure of the incident reported by the whistleblower. SEBI may consider imposing some additional penalty. Let me now come to the second important issue in good governance, that is transparency. The directors operate at the pleasure of the shareholders. Therefore, a shareholder has an unalienable right of access to every piece of information concerning an investigation. The full details of the investigation should be provided on the website of the company so that every shareholder has access to it. The investigating committee or its experts should provide every document of the investigation and answer every question. My view is that there can be only two exceptions to this rule. The first is that there should not be any selective disclosure provided to any one set of shareholders. The second is that any business information that provides a competitive advantage to the company vis-a-vis its competitors in the marketplace cannot be disclosed to any shareholder. I will close with a quotation from President Theodore Roosevelt, who said, and I quote him, "Americanism means the virtues of courage, honor, justice, truth, sincerity, and hardihood. That is the virtues that made America. The things that will destroy America are prosperity at any cost, the love of soft living, and the get-rich-quick theory of life," unquote. These, my friends, are truly immortal words that hold good for all nations. I have hope that our corporate leaders would live up to these seminal words. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Narayana Murthy, for such a detailed dissertation on what corporate governance means. You also spoke about how since 1991, the liberalization that started in 1991, how that led to increased opportunities for growth and wealth creation, leading to consequential situations. And what I like what you said, that good governance means doing the right thing, and good management means doing that right thing well. So before we go to question and answers, we have a small program. We need to release our NMC souvenir. So I shall ask Ms. Rekha Sethi to take charge.
Thank you, Mr. Kirloskar. Mr. Murthy, it's always such a pleasure to hear you. There's always something new and important to learn from you. We now come to a very special part of the session, which is the release of the AIMA souvenir, the convention souvenir. May I request Mr. Murthy and all members on the virtual dais to release the digital souvenir of the 47th National Management Convention. The souvenir has been made interactive and responsive with embedded videos and links. You can download a copy of the souvenir and the AIMA annual report for the year 2019-20 from the AIMA stall in the sponsors hall section on this digital platform. They are also available on the AIMA website. May I now request that May I now request Mr. Sanjay Kirloskar to moderate the questions that we have received from the audience and take them up for discussion.
Thank you. The first question that I have is, what to your mind could have prevented the scams that we have seen in the last few years?
Well, these things happen because of a few reasons. First of all, as I told you, having a weak and incompetent chairman, it's extremely important. I have found my study of boards outside India and in India, and the conclusion is that whenever you have a morally weak and incompetent person chairing the board, these things happen. The second reason why such things have happened, not just in India, even outside, is when the CEO becomes much more powerful than the board, and the chairman becomes beholden to the CEO. Chairman is scared of the CEO. Chairman operates at the pleasure of the CEO. So therefore, in such cases, the board becomes ineffective. I would say that these are the two reasons that I have found why there are huge governance deficits created, not just in India. I've observed, I've studied outside also. It happens outside too.
Okay, thank you. What can boards do? You spoke a lot about whistleblowers and how they need to protect it, but how boards also need to be very careful. But how can boards ensure protection for whistleblowers?
Protection for? No, I think if the as soon as a whistleblower letter comes, if it is against the members of the board, then it is ideally the company secretary must say that the members of the board or the CXO, whatever it is, have been named. Therefore, we will not bring it to their attention. And then he or she will have to obtain the permission of the chairman of the board and the CEO, and then say, we have to invite an external committee of highly respected people in the society to investigate this, because the board itself has been accused, the CEO has been accused, therefore they have to recuse themselves. Now, unfortunately, in India, what happens is the company secretary is not seen as a very impactful post. Most times he is seen as a lackey. So therefore, I would say the chairman of the board has to bring up the confidence of the company secretary in doing the right thing. Once the company secretary is empowered, and if the CEO is not involved, the CXOs are not involved, then obviously he will have to work under the direction of the CXO. If the CXO management is involved but not the board is involved, he will obviously act under the direction of the chairman of the board. But if both the board and the senior management are involved, then he has to rise to the occasion and then in a very respectful way say that this has come to our this thing notice, and we want to appoint an external committee. I think once we start such a practice, I believe that the boards will be protected well, the management will be protected well, and most importantly, the company will be protected well.
Yeah, because finally, everyone is working for the benefit of the company and its business.
Yeah, absolutely.
What is a good multiple for CEO pay for linkage to the pay of the lowest paid employee of the companies? The next question.
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. You know, the per capita GDP in India is $2,000, which is about 1.5 lakhs a year, which is 12,500 rupees a month. Of that, you know better than I do, Sanjay, that 14% of our GDP is contributed by about 50% of the people, agriculture. So what we are saying is the per capita GDP of 50% of Indians is 28% or 30% of that. That means $600 per year, which means $50 per month, which translates to approximately about 4,000 rupees per month or slightly less. Forget about that. But what I'm saying is we are a poor country, extreme poverty, stark poverty. In such a situation, if the lowest salary in a country like India is somewhere around 2 lakhs or 3 lakhs, then I believe that even if somebody, I used to say 30, but there's a lot of inflation. So even if it goes to somewhere around 70 to 80, should be all right. That's my view.
Okay. The next question is, we spoke about SEBI, and you were also, I believe, on some of the SEBI committees.
Yeah.
What can SEBI do to increase corporate transparency level to a level that will satisfy the public and not just the big shareholders?
1 minute. There's a plane going here. I couldn't hear.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was the last part of the thing?
Yeah. What can SEBI do to increase corporate transparency to a level that will satisfy the public and not just the big shareholders?
No, I think if SEBI has all the powers under its arms to mandate transparency of the kind that is needed. But the reality of India is that we are not a nation that welcomes revolutionary changes. That is our culture. See, till 1991, thanks to Sri P.V. Narasimha Rao, in 1991, we had the economic reforms. After 1991, we have not had any such major reforms. So culturally, we are not accustomed to revolutionary changes. We somehow make adjustments, we make compromises. So I think if we want a major improvement in our transparency, then just as what happened under Prime Minister P.V. Narasimha Rao and Sri Manmohan and Dr. Manmohan Singh, Montek Singh Ahluwalia and Chidambaram, etc. SEBI also should set up a committee and then say that we want to bring in revolutionary changes in transparency. I tell you, one good thing about India is if we bring revolutionary changes without too much of discussion, as long as those changes are fair and are suggested by respected people, the country will accept it. Just like licensing was abolished. Sanjay, licensing was abolished. Control of capital issues was abolished. There was no current account convertibility before 1991. That was introduced. All these things took 1 week. So my personal view is that we can bring about such changes as long as there is a will and there is a desire.
Sanjay, you're muted.
Yeah.
I will leave corporate governance to a side just now, because there's a lot of IT-related questions that have come up, and you are an icon from the IT industry. So let me take them one after the other, because we have, I believe, about 10, 12 more minutes. What, according to you, will be the future of the Indian IT consultancy business once we are past COVID-19?
Indian companies will continue to grow at probably anywhere between 7 and 10%. They will continue to be profitable in the operating margin region of somewhere between 15 and 20%. So in other words, it will be plus ça change, plus la même chose, as the French say. The more it changes, the more it remains the same. But however, if we want to get higher per capita revenue productivity, if we want to become Accentures of the world, if we want to become McKinseys of the world, Bains of the world, etc., BCGs of the world, then we have to move from reactive problem solving to proactive problem recognition and solution mindset. See, I was, in Infosys from 1981 when I founded it, along with 6 younger colleagues of mine, to 2014. And every year we used to conduct customer surveys. The biggest complaint we have had was, you guys are excellent people, you are willing to work hard, but you will do what we ask you to do. You don't come and tell us that I see this problem in the company. I read your annual report. I see these are the strategic issues, and this is how I can contribute. Sanjay, without exception, every one of the 20 years during which we conducted survey, this point came out. So I think if the Indian IT industry moves from being reactive problem solvers to proactive problem definers and solution providers, then our per capita revenue productivity will improve. We will become much better known, and the growth will be spectacular. That's what I would say.
Okay. Two more, I'll put them in, combine them.
Sure.
Can the COVID pandemic help Indian IT startups to accelerate their course towards becoming unicorns? And on the other side, in the current scenario, would we see consolidation in Indian IT via mergers and acquisitions?
First of all, I'm not a great fan of work from home. I believe that office is the place to work. Home is the place to spend time with your loved ones. Mixing the two is not a good idea on a long-term basis. Yeah, I understand that this is the COVID time. There is no alternative. Therefore, we have adapted. But this should be a short-term solution. So that is on the issue of the COVID thing. Now, so what was the second question? I forgot. What was
in the current scenario, can we see consolidation? Can we see consolidation?
Okay. There are, let's say, 5 or 6 major players in the country today. You have TCS, you have Accenture, you have IBM, you have Infosys, you have Wipro, and you have HCL. These are the 3. Maybe you can perhaps add Tech Mahindra. These are 6 or 7 major players. Now, some of these have very high valuation. TCS is somewhere around 800,000 crores. Infosys is around 400,000 crores. Maybe Wipro around 150 or 200. I don't know. I don't know if the Indian companies have the financial muscle to acquire one of these. However, there are a lot of smaller people, but I am not a great fan of acquiring yet another software services company. My argument at the internal board used to be, look, we attract the best talent, we have the best training in the world, not just in India, for our talent, and we provide the best technological and physical infrastructure. Again, in the world, you can compare it with any company you want in the world, we are ahead of them. In such a case, acquiring another software services company with lower quality talent, lower quality training, and lower quality technological and physical infrastructure is only going to dilute us. So I was never in favor of acquiring any of these. However, an acquisition strategy should look at complementary strengths. That is, we have very little revenue coming from, let's say, a certain sector. This company that we are looking at has significant strength in that sector. They have equally good talent, they have equally good training program, they have equally good infrastructure. Then there is a case. Second, you may acquire a company that has an IPR, which you can leverage for accelerating the growth of your services using that particular IPR. Now, the third area could be complementarity in terms of geographical concentration. If we are not at all present in Africa today, or maybe except for Finacle, which is the banking package, and if there is a company that has a strong presence in Africa, and it satisfies the other three conditions that I spoke about, then there is a sense. Second, I am also not a great fan of acquiring companies that have low margins. I am a great believer in bottom line. I believe in top line, but that top line has to come with very good bottom line, because I used to say that our strategy has to be to do whatever is necessary to create sustained differentiation in the marketplace to obtain industry leading margins. We have to make money hand over fist. So I am not a great fan of acquiring companies which have low margins. I would say that these are the ways that acquisition or mergers could be considered.
You're muted, Sanjay. You're muted.
Sorry, I think we are coming close to the end of the session. So there was a large number of questions, and one I really wanted to ask you, but we'll have to do it some other time. Which is, given your experience, would you still go for an outside chairman? But there is no time for that. I think Mr. Singhania has to conclude, and I'll hand over the floor to him. Yield the floor to him.
Thank you, Sanjay. Am I audible enough?
Yeah, you are. Yeah.
Mr. Narayana Murthy, Sanjay, President AIMA still, Sunil Munjal, Convention Chairman, my dear friend Rekha, Sethi, Director General of AIMA, ladies and gentlemen, and all those who have logged in. It is my great privilege to offer some concluding remarks at this session, which I think all of you will agree has been very interesting and thought-provocative. Sanjay, I think at the outset you put down the issues related to governance of boards, etc., which we are all grappling with. You and I, both being businessmen, we are often confronted with these issues. And Sunil Munjal raised this to a very different level, if I may say, took it to almost a different trajectory, where he raised the issues of not just corporate governance in companies and in a boardroom, but also questions of governance as society, in nations, and on a much, much larger scale. So certainly very thought-provoking things, and really the issue of the question that I liked was to ask ourselves as to what really matters. And then we will probably find an answer to what we should be doing. Mr. Narayana Murthy, you have very clearly articulated and with great patience and in detail, if I may say, the various aspects and steps to how does one look at the whole issue of corporate governance, functioning of boards, the responsibilities and roles of even management of all the stakeholders, I would say. And you have clearly articulated. In fact, I'm going to ask Rekha Sethi to send me a transcript of the speech, which we can use, and I say this seriously, almost as a manual to look at some of these things to say. So thank you very much for that very clear and detailed exposition for this. The issue of corporate governance is dynamic, and we are always confronted with new challenges. When we think we have answers to several things, we have crossed those regulations, those issues, new issues and dilemmas. But that is the very nature of human beings, to be responsive, to be dynamic, like we are in the COVID scenario. So I think this is an issue which will remain at the top of mind for all of us, and we will all evolve from situation. As far as regulators are concerned, while we have seen a vast difference in the last few decades with SEBI and other regulations coming in, if I may humbly submit, my belief is that at the end of the day, it is values that you have that are ultimately going to govern how you will conduct corporate governance and how other stakeholders are going to view you. You can have n number of regulations, but somebody, if I may pardon the expression, a crook who wants to cheat the system or game the system can always do that, and regulations will always catch up. So I think the best thing is that we uh, promote corporate value of fairness, transparency, as you said, and trust, which I think at the end of the day will determine how this will happen. So really speaking, these would really be the overarching things which will take that into effect. Ladies and gentlemen, we are at the end of the session, and I want to once again thank Murthy for being with us. Although this is a virtual presence, Mr. Narayana Murthy, we will also try and grab you, if I may say, at some point when we are in the physical world for AIMA. Rekha, thanks to you and your team for doing all this, and special thanks to our audience who have logged in. And I believe that we have, Rekha, a record participation, and perhaps much more than what a whole lot of other chambers may have had for their seminars. And I'd like to thank the audience for doing this. Thank you once again. And now we will move on to our award session, I think. But I will encourage the audience to remain logged in to what promises to be a very interesting couple of days of discussions. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Singhania.
Thank you very much. While I'll just make a short statement, Harsh.
Please.
There are three attributes or three characteristics that make us do all kinds of undesirable things. They are greed, second, ego, and then third, jealousy. If we can every day think of it once and then say, today I will reduce my level of jealousy, my level of ego, my level of greed, just for 5 minutes, I do believe that a lot of the problems that we have all been talking about will reduce. So I just wanted to say that because.
So absolutely, as they say in the old saying, "Kam krodh lobh moh lo."
Yeah.
Lobh.
Exactly. Same. Thanks a lot. Very kind of you. Thanks to every one of you. Huh? Thanks.
Thank you,
Take care.
Mr. Murthy. Thank you so much for ending on such an inspiring note. I would like to thank you very much on behalf of AIMA. And as Mr. Singhania said, hope to catch you physically once
Absolutely.
COVID is behind us.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Ladies and gentlemen, we come to the end of the session. May I request you to stay logged on as we go to the next session, which is a very special session on AIMA Awards. Give us a couple of minutes while we log on to the next session. Thank you. But do stay logged on.